Good morning. It is September 28th. It's now somewhere around 11 o'clock, and we are at the Ardent Creative Offices in Fort Worth, Texas. And uh, we thought about having this idea of just sitting down and having a conversation. My name is David Canington, my business partner, Brad Ball, and we want to have a conversation about things that we talk about on a daily basis, from business to stuff that's trending and the challenges that we face in business. We found ourselves having these conversations in day-to-day Zoom calls now that uh, our business has pretty much gone 100% remote. And outside of those Zoom calls, we've also found ourselves having these conversations with other business people, sort of saying, how did you do this? How did you do that? And I just thought we do some videos and kind of see how it goes and
Talk about it.
talk about it. Yeah, in no way do we expect these to be perfect or to be a well.
But you're perfect.
This is true. A well-oiled machine because we're kind of figuring this out as we go, and so yeah. One of the main things that I get a lot when we're talking, and you probably get the same, is business and COVID. Would you agree?
Well, obviously that's the hot topic right now, regardless of where you are or who you are, whether it's personal or business. COVID's kind of changed everything.
Yeah, it's I hear the phrase a lot. The new normal. The new normal is as it pertains to business, as it pertains to school, as it pertains to family life, travel, you name it. There's a new normal. Uh, the one thing I think that we should try to cover is the fact that, and it's a question that I get a lot, was when everything first hit. Do you get that?
I was on a boat.
You were on a boat. Uh, that's a story. We'll talk about that. But you were on a boat, and it was quite the situation for us when everything first came down. So I'd say we start there, and then let's talk about our perspective on where it goes from there. And we can. There's a handful of things I think we want to try to cover this first go around, and then we'll just kind of see where this evolves and goes from there.
Yeah.
So like you said, you were on a boat. I was in the office. Everything was coming down, and I was texting you. And in our office, what was happening was we'd already had an idea and seen. We'd already had discussions about this thing called Corona and COVID, and we were already having discussions about it. Say, this might be a thing. This might be something, and we didn't really know.
Actually, that may not be entirely true, because he says it might be. David was pretty much freaking out from the get-go. And I got on a boat, and he's like, you may not get back. I was like, it's not that big of a deal. We'll be fine. And so we were the last group of cruise ships that went out and came back. And so we sailed out of Galveston. And so I was in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of nowhere, while, a lot of this was getting worse and worse. And, you would hear rumblings. And I get a text from David on the Friday as we're trying to head back towards port. And he says, we're going all remote next 2 weeks. Nothing had been implemented yet, but on the state level. And so I was like, okay. We had already prepared, not necessarily for COVID, but over the holidays of 2019, we had already basically let everybody work remote anyway. And all they had to do is put in, X amount of hours during the holidays, and they were already set up with their laptops and everything. So it was an easy transition for us to go from in the office to remote. Now, obviously there's things to work through in that, but it was an easy decision to make on our part.
Well, it wasn't an easy decision.
Well, that we could do it. It was an easier decision that we could do it. Not that, going completely remote. We had talked about, even as a company, going remote at one point, but we weren't ready. Culture's really big, for me, and the relationship sides of things is one of our core values. And, our employees really love connecting and, collaborating on projects. And so going completely remote is, kind of a hard decision overall anyway. And, we have a cool office space, which you can kind of see here. But, in that situation, employees' health is a big deal. And I was already quarantining myself per some suggestions by one particular employee says, "Hey, you need to stay home after you get back because you never know. I mean, thousands of people on a boat, the odds of somebody having it are probably pretty high." And so I'd already quarantined myself, but then basically for those 2 weeks we shut down until the governor decided to basically implement all these different rules that we're still in today.
Yeah, so you were coming back, and we decided to go 100% remote. And the team, like I said, since we did what we did in December, which was we were set up and ready to go, and we kind of hit the ground running right out the gate. But that first week when you came back was the time when it was kind of like, okay, now it's time to make all the tough decisions. And that first week was really, really hard.
Yeah, that was one of the most stressful weeks we've had in probably a decade. Looking at everybody's jobs and payroll, and what's the hit going to be. And David's kind of the mentality of expect the best, plan for the worst. Sometimes it's kind of expect the best or expect the worst and plan for it too. But we tried to really see what was going to happen, how many people were going to cut back on their budgets, what jobs are going to stop, our sales are going to completely stop. And
yeah, because we didn't I don't mean to jump in, but it's like we didn't know if this was going to last a week, a month, 3 months, 6 months. So we kind of had to look at it from the perspective as kind of like we have to be able to operate our team with minimal budgets and be flexible as our clients are going to need us to be flexible. So it was a really challenging week, that first week.
Well, we've been developing a software too in this process that we're bootstrapping and really building. And when this hit, that basically came to a halt, at least for a couple of weeks. And you got employees that are working on it. And, okay, what do we do? How do we pivot, or how do we plan? What the next steps are. So there were a lot of things we had to work through, and stress. You could feel it physically too. So, or at least that's kind of how I do. If I'm extremely stressed, I'll generally have, I won't feel great, and so.
And anyone on my team will tell you that I'm a pretty stoic person. That this is pretty much me all the time. I don't get happy. I don't get sad. But that Friday, it's like, I know I'm sort of showing a bit much here. It's like that Friday on our executive team call, as far as the decisions we made, because we had to make some tough decisions that first week, as far as the first time in 15 years of doing this, we had to let people go, not for the reason of they weren't able to do the job or for various other reasons. We had to let people go who were great employees and great team members and people that we really liked, but based upon having to make hard decisions, we had to do things. And I found myself on the call, like in that first 5 minutes, it's like all the realization of everything hitting me all at once. And I'm literally bursting into tears because it's kind of like I've never had to do anything like that before. And it was a really, really tough week. But I think a lot of the decisions that we made up front going into this helped sustain us through the initial hit and the initial first wave of uncertainty and craziness and everything that happens. I think, and you'll hear us say this word a lot through, I think, this conversation is uncertainty. Because, how do you prepare for what you don't know? It's like we can forecast all we want and vision cast and plan for this and plan for that. But when there are outside forces coming at you at a family level, the uncertainty of the safety of your family, the uncertainty of the stability of your business, the uncertainty of just stability in community, it all came down on us all at one time.
Yeah, that first week was the most stressful for sure. And the second, once we got past and made the decisions we need to, we really had to shift our mindset. And that's the big thing about all this is, we were in let's say, a dark place during that time just because of the stress and what we were having to do. But once we made the decisions and knew where we had to go, uh, we really changed perspective and changed what the strategy was. And from that point on, it's like, okay, we've got this. We've made the decisions, and let's continue to do what we need to do. And April and May weren't the greatest months, but March was good. And so, as a part of the ebb and flow of everything. But the cool thing, looking back, after we got through the first couple weeks of making those decisions, the support from our entire staff was amazing because they could see the stress that we're under, trying to make the decisions for everybody, and really where we are going with the company, what we wanted to do, with everybody's lives, in mind. And so the support that we had, I think, was immeasurable and amazing. And so we really do value every employee that we have, and that's what made it so difficult in the first place. And but from that point, I think we really got our minds right, and in the best way to say it.
And I think that leads into the next point as far as these are the steps we took during the initial phase of COVID. And now I think that the place to look now is the direction in terms of post-COVID, and like what we talked about, the whole what's the new normal, these pieces, the effect is always going to be there for a good period of time. But post-COVID, like we've completely changed the way we communicate with our employees. We've always been very transparent with our employees, but I believe that it's taken it to a whole nother level now. And same thing with our clients and partners that we work with. Just how you communicate and just your level of transparency and genuineness as far as, hey, we're kind of all in this together, and not always presenting things that aren't as though they are, but just sort of knowing that you're the people that you're working with, and in return they'll have your back as well. So I think that a lot of that comes down to messaging, and you've done a great job in now we're communicating just simply with a weekly email to the team. We have our it's 11:30 now, or 11:34, and we're about to have an all staff call that we have every week, and we're constantly going through, and we've raised the level of communication with our team, even in a full remote way, than we probably even had when everyone was in the office.
Well, I think the big thing with this is I think we were very good at giving our employees the ability to make decisions and kind of lead their different departments, whether it's digital marketing, web development, design, or account management. And so the big thing is, especially in this post-COVID kind of scenario, is a lot of people really have to take ownership of their jobs and do it, what they need to do. Is that we can't be micromanaging. We can't stand behind their computer making sure they are doing what they need to do. They just have to own it. And the different things that we have in place to kind of monitor, whether it's time or what their job is, are they getting it done on time, meeting deadlines and all those things. Every employee has to own that. And so I think that's where communication is extremely important, whether it's between us and team leaders or between the employees themselves.
No, I agree, and I think the teams have really come together in figuring out how to do that. They did a great job before, but now we've had to learn how to do it all over again. And just having these conversations with our executive team, through our team leads, through the teams in general, as far as how they communicate, who's responsible for what and what needs to be done, has been really, really important. And then also being able to communicate back to the client in such a way has been, I think that out of all this, we've become a lot stronger in the areas that we were good at before, but this has helped us develop a muscle or an ability to do things at a higher level, because we've had to go through the challenges we've had to go through.
Yeah, I think you have to challenge yourselves. I mean, it's like with exercise or fitness, that you can always do better. You can always get stronger, really, no matter how old you are, how young you are. And with this, you find a pain point or you find a way to get better, and you just, it doesn't have to be a drastic jump. Little increments day by day make a huge improvement when you look back. And so I really think that's COVID forced us into some things. And we had talked about going fully remote at some point, and this has just pushed us into that, and we had to evolve as a company to really having that make us stronger and better.
Yeah, and then now it's being the end of September and leading into October, and then obviously November we have the election coming up, and our goal in this is not to get political either way, but it just comes down to, with both sides, we have this level of uncertainty. Does Trump stay in office? What's going to happen if Trump stays in office? If Biden gets in office, what's going to happen if Biden gets in office? And you have ultimately, I think you have these two opposable forces just sort of ramming at each other, that that they both won't find the middle ground for the betterment of the country. And like I said, this is not to get political, but from the business standpoint, I think, in my point of view, I think that we have to try to find the opportunity in all of this, and knowing that we're setting ourselves up for what is going to happen after the election. Because I think people right now, there's a level of hesitancy. It's like, do I do this project? Do I buy this building? Do I take this risk right now? And they're kind of waiting to see, one way or another, which side wins, and sort of looking to see the outcome that comes out of that.
Well, I think history over time is always this time period.
Yeah.
Every 4 years is extremely volatile, and you don't know what's coming, and so there's a lot of push and pull regardless of side. And not to go down a huge rabbit trail, but as businesses, we have to kind of monitor that and really position based on kind of expectations of what's going to happen afterwards. And when it comes to COVID, there's a lot of different unknowns, and it's trying to look at all the different data and all the different information you can and really make wise decisions, not left or right, but looking at everything together, because there's things out of our control. And even now, as it keeps going, what's going to look like in the the Q4 of this year. And after the election, it's not going to go away. We're going to go in the flu season, and there's still going to be some rumblings of how this plays out. Florida just opened up, no more masks and trying to boost the economy. Waiting for Texas to do that. What's going to happen, in the nation? Because some of the biggest industries in the world, like air and hotels, are hammered, and it's going to take years before hotels ever get back to where they were, or conferences. And the ripple effect to other industries is huge. And even in our own city, some of the most difficult things right now is the supply chain, supply and demand, getting wood in to build buildings, because housing is growing here. Well, for every action, there's an opposite reaction. You hit a domino, it's going to keep hitting other dominoes as they keep falling. Well, how does that affect us as a company? How does that affect our clients? Both good and bad. And so we have to weigh those things as we move forward and really try to see, okay, what's this going to look like and how's it going to affect us? And so,
yeah, and there are some businesses that are going to find the opportunity in this. Like, I'll give you an example. I know it's been especially hard on restaurants. There was a restaurant up the road from my house that just opened up right at the beginning of this. I think they were open for like 2 months, right before COVID hit hard. And I went in and talked to them about 3 or 4 weeks after everything hit, and I asked them how they were doing, and they kind of saw the opportunity in it, and they quickly shifted their business to be delivery and takeout, and they optimized their business specifically for that, and they have thrived. Like whenever we would go in there, they had boxes and boxes lined up of people ready to go. And I know that hasn't been the case for everybody. I know that every business has had its own challenge. I remember I went in and got my hair cut from a person that cuts my hair, and she told me, we were shut down for this many weeks, and it was hard on them. And if you can't operate your business, you can't operate your business. And that's a challenge that's hard to overcome. But as businesses, whenever something gets thrown at us, we, opposed to just saying, well, I can't do what it is that I do anymore, we have to step back and try to find the way to operate around or in a more creative way. And it's kind of looking at things through a creative lens on how you approach business in general, or how you're going to reach your clients. Once again, that comes back to messaging and communication, or how you're going to set up your teams in such a way so that they can succeed and continue to do what you're doing. Because we knew when everything first shut down, a lot of businesses that we were working with, that were in the middle of projects with, they had a lot of trouble in figuring out the remote work environment, because they're accustomed to being in an office, and they didn't do the same thing that we did, and we probably would have struggled the same way had we not had a dry run at this back in December. But just looking at things through a creative lens, and I know that you're working on writing a book about looking at business from the creative aspect that gives business leaders the ability to have a different perspective and on just it's black and white. There's always a sliver or a pivot somewhere in there. So,
well, I think the big thing is that I believe every person, whether you're a business owner, an artist, a musician, just worker, is creative. And if you think about as a child what you did and how big your imaginations were, and I'm sure you can remember as a kid growing up poor, which you'll talk about often, and how you and your brother James would, occupy your time and the imagination or creative things that you may build or do. You don't have that anymore. And so what happens is you get stuck in a desk every day, day on end, and that creativity, that imagination just gets pushed to the back burner. But that is a part of everybody. And so my goal with the book and what I'm working through is how to encourage business owners or people to really tap into that creativity, because it will give you a bigger vision. It'll let you see more of what's going on. And part of it is just slowing down enough to really let that happen and pay attention to what's around you. And so I'm close to halfway through writing the book, and we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah. So I said, our ultimate hope in all this is, from time to time, we want to have conversations, whether it's between us or whether it's between our team members or us with clients or people that in the business world that we think that can work to push us forward or inspire us or find that sliver of creativity to put out there. And we want to take and help to inspire through any challenging times that we may have as business leaders or as just family members between with our own families. As far as we talk about all the time, if you come into our office, there's a big sign that says we work to live, not live to work, and that's really paramount. That's part of our core foundation of why we started this and why we chose to do things the way we do them. And we're kind of figuring everything out in this perspective as we go along. We don't think that anybody has the absolute answer, and we're willing to say that when others aren't. So we just want to take and work to start a community or a dialogue between us and others out there that can kind of help others down the road. Would you agree?
Yeah, I just thought of a quote. You only live once, so make it great. And I think that's kind of part of the work to live, not live to work statement, is that, we have families and employees that have families. And you'll hear me say this a lot if you came into the office, is that if you don't love what you do, then you need to find something that you do love, because you only live once and you need to enjoy it. And so, let's make it great. And so I think that's, important with anything that you do, is loving it and loving your family. And that's really kind of how we do what we do.
Yeah. So we hope that everyone stays safe. They find the creative perspective to help their business, their family, their community grow, and we look forward to taking this conversation a little bit further.
Don't be afraid to ask questions. That's what we have to do.
Yeah.
Support each other.
Yeah. So thank you guys.